I'll go on home, it's late. There'll be tomorrow night, but wait, what do I see? Is she walking back to me? Yes, she's walking back to me. Oh, pretty woman. Rising up, back on the street. Did my time, took my chances. Went the distance, now I'm back on my feet. Just a man and his will to survive. So many times it happens too fast. You trade your passion for glory. Don't lose your grip on the dreams of the past. You must fight just to keep them alive. It's the eye of the tiger, it's the thrill of the fight. Rising up to the challenge of our rival. And the last known survivor stalks his spread in the night. And he's watching us all with the eye of the tiger. Face to face, out in the heat, hanging tough, staying hungry. They stack the odds till we take to the street for the kill with the skill to survive. It's the eye of the tiger, it's the thrill of the fight. Rising up to the challenge of our rival. And the last known survivor stalks his spread in the night. And he's watching us all with the eye of the tiger. Rising up, straight to the top. Had the guts, got the glory. Went the distance, now I'm not gonna stop. Just a man and his will to survive. It's the eye of the tiger, it's the thrill of the fight. Rising up to the challenge of our rival. And the last known survivor stalks his prey in the night. And he's watching us all with the eye of the tiger. The eye of the tiger. Eye of the tiger. Eye of the tiger.
Big John, Big John.
Every morning at the mine you could see him arrive. He stood 6'6" and weighed 245, kind of broad at the shoulder and narrow at the hip. And everybody knew you didn't give no lip to Big John.
Big John, Big John,
Big Bad John.
Big John,
Nobody seemed to know where John called home. He just drifted into town and stayed all alone. He didn't say much, he kind of quiet and shy. And if you spoke at all, you just said hi to Big John. Somebody said he came from New Orleans, where he got in a fight over a Cajun queen, and a crashing blow from a huge right hand sent a Louisiana fella to the promised land, Big John.
Big John, Big John,
Big Bad John.
Big John.
Then came the day at the bottom of the mine when a timber cracked and men started crying. Miners were praying and hearts beat fast, and everybody thought that they'd breathe their last except John. Through the dust and the smoke of this man-made hell walked a giant of a man that the miners knew well, grabbed a sagging timber and gave out with a groan, and like a giant oak tree just stood there alone, Big John.
Big John, respected, larger than life, a heart of gold, honest, a big man with a bigger heart, an icon, a gentleman, a champion, a mentor, hard as nails, soft as butter, a huge presence, a gentle giant, passionate, legend, a bit rough around the edges, but tough and fair and a hero, leaving a legacy and a lasting impact on all of those around him. Reading the outpouring of comments after the announcement of Frog's death over the last week or so, you soon pick up a few keywords that are being used time and time again to sum up this man. And I thought it would only be fitting to open today's service with just some of those words. And so this afternoon we meet as a group of people who have known and who have loved John Michael Newman, Frog. We are here today to mourn his death, but we are also here to honour and to celebrate his life. As we begin this service, I would like to thank you, Julia, Chelsea and Matthew, Nick and Jane, Mia, Alec, Fletcher, Lily, and of course little Priya, for inviting Parkside to care for Frog and for you as a family, and for allowing me to share in just a small part of the honouring of Frog's life. And so on behalf of Frog's family, I welcome you all here this afternoon. And for those of you who are watching this service via live stream, or perhaps watching at a later time, I welcome you also. Your presence is just as valued whether you're here in person or here in spirit. Before we move too far into our service, I would just like to ask that you could take a moment to check that your mobile phone is turned off or onto silent as your mark of respect for Frog. For this time here this afternoon belongs to him. At the conclusion of this service, the family would love for you to join them outside as Frog leaves. But please, if you're able to, return inside into the foyer area to share with them a time of light refreshment. A little later this afternoon, the Yolla Football Club rooms will also be open for anyone wishing to head up there for a few more. I'm sure, in true Frog Newman fashion, the drinks will flow, and so will the stories. A little earlier today, we took Frog back to his beloved Yolla. We shared a few quiet family moments at his home, at the farm, before taking him on a final lap of his beloved Yolla Demons Oval. Thank you to the past and present members of the Yolla Football Club, and indeed all of the clubs who were represented there this morning, for turning out in such numbers to farewell this absolute legend of coastal football. There are many things that make a town, that make a community. Things like infrastructure, roads and buildings and parks, sporting clubs, events, festivals, markets, shows. But most importantly, it is the people. It is the identities, the characters, the people whose name are synonymous with the name of the area that they are from. It only takes a quick look, as I mentioned, through the tributes and the comments on, as Frog would say, Spacebook, to see that Frog Newman is one of those people. Frog had some pretty explicit instructions on how he wanted today to run. He didn't want some bastard like me that he didn't know getting up here and fawning words all over him about how everyone loved him and how good he was. And so, Frog, now we've got the soppy shit out of the way, I can just hear him saying, "Boy, get on with it." So to begin our service, we're going to have a minute or two of silence before Frog's son Nick takes the stage and begins the telling of Frog's story.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. In restless dreams I walked alone, narrow streets of cobblestone, neath the halo of a street lamp. I turned my collar to the cold and damp, when my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light that split the night and touched the sound of silence. And in the naked light I saw 10,000 people, maybe more. People talking without speaking. People hearing without listening. People writing songs and voices
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to welcome everybody to celebrate Dad, John Frog Newman. He'd be humbled, but more, he'd be embarrassed. He'd be embarrassed by the turnout here today. He had a few words to me the other night, and he said one thing. He said he didn't want anyone crying, bawling, or snot flying out of him over his death. He wanted it to be a joyful event, full of happiness and memories. Well, I reckon I'm about to break that first rule straight up, but I'm going to see how I go. Chelsea and Mum have been on a Dad for years to write a book. He said, who'd want to read that? After considering the great life and stories he accumulated over time, he actually thought it'd probably be okay to do. He didn't like the thought of writing about himself, so Chelsea bought him a handheld recording device. He used it a bit. When the batteries went flat, he was replacing them, and him being so tech-savvy that he was, unfortunately wiped nearly everything he'd already recorded on it. We went through it the other day. This is the first message that we got off the machine.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Hello again.
That puts him about to a T for all of us that knew him. On further investigations on he had a book sitting beside the chair he used to sit in. We found a writing of his life story, which I'd like to complete one day soon. Also, we found his own funeral layout, which he'd written about 6 months ago, including his own songs he wanted. So much for happiness and joy, the saddest, morbidest, bloody songs you've ever heard, as that one we just had. But anyway, I reckon he knew he was crook for a while, and yeah, obviously didn't want to say much about it. But anyway, these words are straight from Dad. John Michael Newman was born 9th December 1954. I was the eldest child of Dennis and Greta, brother of Alan, Danny, Leona, Barry and Carol, loved husband of Julia, proud father and father-in-law of Chelsea and Matthew, Nick and Jane, and devoted pop of Mia, Lily, Alec, Fletcher and Priya. I was born in Wynyard, I was married in Wynyard, and I lived in Wynyard. I love my family, my friends and football. Now I have your attention. Obviously, I'm no longer with you. I would rather conduct this service myself so someone else doesn't have to stand up here and speak about me with glowing references and lies about how good of a bloke I was. I had a pretty hard start to life, as most people did that I knew growing up. I hated school with a passion. I couldn't wait to get out of the place. I've made a few mistakes in my life, but after moving out at 15 and bunking with the Stewart family on a farm at Yolla, I found my life moving forward in a positive direction. The Stewart family were very good to me, and I finally realised my potential after being constantly belittled at school and in life in general. The headmaster told me once, "Newman, you'll amount to nothing." I'd never forgotten that statement, and I worked my arse off ever since. I'd like to acknowledge Jeff Gavey. He was a good boss, and I managed to work my up from the broom to the workshop foreman and safety officer. About the same time, Barry Eves, our under-17 coach, had a major impact on my life as a mentor, footy and life coach. He was so good to us, I don't think Wynyard Football Club realised what they had. He was miles ahead of his time. Everything was all happening for the better. About the same time, one of my teammates, Dippy, introduced me to this lovely young Catholic girl named Julia. And the rest is history. Together we raised a family, started our own businesses. We both worked hard to succeed in life. Julia as Minister of War and Finances, Family and Security. I was just the court jester and bullshit artist that made things happen. After my precious family, playing football and coaching young men was my passion. I was fortunate enough to have the support of my family and the men around me to share the huge amount of success that we all work so hard for. I've met some wonderful people across the journey. A lot of them are no longer with us. I might see them soon. It was always great to catch up with old mates, friends or foe, to reminisce the great times we shared on and off the field. I was especially proud of being Yolla's first premiership coach in 1979 and having the four brothers playing together in 1980. Mum especially and Dad never missed a game that year. We were so pleased to see the smile on our mother's face after each game. Life after football was hard for me. I missed the camaraderie, the battle and the joy of celebration and the sense of fulfilment. Alas, my dear wife assured me that family was more important than anything else in life and that family would still be around after the wheels of Father of Time had rolled on. She was right as usual. When it was time for the kids to fly the coop, Julia and I was patiently waiting for pitter-patter of little feet to fulfil our lives. Nick and Jane presented us with a beautiful granddaughter, Mia, and then Chelsea and Matthew brought Alec into the clan, followed by Mia's little sister, Lily, Alec's little brother, Fletcher, and down the track a bit, little Priya, to complete the brood. As the kids spent a lot of time at our place, we loved every minute of it. I particularly enjoyed taking the kids fishing when they were old enough. I'm very proud of our family and their achievements. I know the grandkids will also do well because of the time and effort that's gone into raising them the right way by all concerned. I've selected 4 songs for my last stanza, which are pretty self-explanatory. Thanks for coming, and I'll see you on the other side. Love you all. Thanks for your friendship and loyalty. Especially you, Julia. You were my whole being. If it wasn't for you, that fucking headmaster might have been right. Thank you. Now we're going to have a few memories from all our shared family.
On behalf of John's siblings, Alan, Danny, Leona, Carol and myself, we'd like to thank everyone for turning out today. John would have been a little bit taken back about all the fuss. John was a person who loved Julia, his kids, Chelsea, Nick, his grandkids in Mia, Lily, Alec, Fletch and Priya, loved them very dearly. John was also affected by some people in his life that have passed, Lyndon Broomall, Lenny Walker, Skinny Walker and Terence Hoare, and he had a love and affection for people that a lot of people wouldn't understand along the way. There's also a couple of stories that you probably don't know about John. I won't go on about all the football stuff because that'll be spoken about later on. On his way to school to talk to the bus driver, Arnie Crisp, and John used to have a rifle that you could screw together, and on the way to school Arnie would spot some rabbits and stop the school bus, and John would put the rifle together, and if there was 1 or 2 rabbits there he had to give half to the bus driver, so he'd pop a couple off, they'd get to school, skin the rabbits, and the bus driver would look after them until the way home. One other trip I'd personally had with John, one Australia Day weekend about 35 years ago, we went down to Strahan and We left Yolla and I'd put a carton of stubbies on the back, and we pulled up at Yolla and got another carton, and on the way to Strawn, John wasn't shy of having a beer, and John drank 18 stubbies to my 6, and I was just flat out opening the stubbies. On our arrival to Strawn, we subsequently had another 2 hours in the pub and bought another carton, bottle of whiskey and a flagon of port to go to the shack. In doing so, we was quite slow the next morning in putting our pots out. We went out, put our pots out and come back and had a sleep, and then went back out to check our pots about 4 hours later, and we picked up about 6 crays, and we come home and cooked the crays. Another person John had quite a good relationship with was Buggy, who passed away recently, and he told me a story about Buggy when he had some batteries stolen out of his excavator down at his quarry, and he had to go and get some new batteries, and lo and behold, about 6 months later goes past and someone stole the batteries out of his digger again, and the insurance agency said he had to go and make a police report. So he goes into the police, Buggy goes into the police and reports that his battery's been stolen for the second time, and the policeman down at Wynyard said, "Why didn't you come in and report it the first time?" And Buggy's response was, "Well, you blokes couldn't track an elephant in a foot of snow with a cut foot." One other thing John would like me to do is ask all that could be upstanding to stand up now, and those that can't remain seated. Now you are all standing, I'd politely ask you to sit back down again, because John hated to do that, so I'll leave it with you there. John was unmistakably the kind of person you didn't forget once you met him. He had a way of seeing things clearly, no sugarcoating, no pretence. He just called things as they were, as he taught us, whether he meant to or not. You don't have to be loud to be heard, or perfect to be loved. He showed up, stood tall, lived on his own terms. Rest easy, big brother, will be fondly remembered and sadly missed by us all.
When a bloke called John Newman came and sat beside me in school one day all those years ago, little did either of us realise that it would be the start of an enduring friendship that lasted a lifetime. Later that year he came to stay at the farm for a weekend and ended up staying over 2 years. In doing so, he became part of the Stewart family. He fitted into our way of life right from the word go, and Phil had finally found someone who could actually kick the footy back to him. We three in particular didn't always see eye to eye on how everything should go around the farm. In other words, we argued a fair bit. But it would only take Mum to threaten to send him home, and both Phil and I'd pull our heads in and plead with Mum to let him stay. And thank God she did. Those days, 3 packets of cornflakes and a box of wheat bix was never enough to last the week, and we'd regularly end up having bread and milk for the last few days. He's still the only bloke that I've ever known to have 4 bowls of cornflakes and 3 pieces of toast for breakfast. But believe it or not, Frog was a fussy eater when he first arrived at our place. And Graham can still recall him sitting around the dinner table one night, espousing to Mum and Dad all the foods he didn't like. Mum just grinned at him. She never made any exceptions for anyone. Wasn't long before he quipped back, "Well, I might try some of that, Mrs. Stewart." It was always Mrs. Stewart with Frog, and it took him a long time before he'd call her anything else. Frog did what we did. He ate what we ate in the finish, even to the point of being halfway through a second sandwich of this beautiful meat that he'd never tried before. saying how delicious it was and keep asking Mum what it was. Mum just sat there with a sly grin on her face as she did. Eventually she told him. Straight outside he went, 2 fingers down the throat and up she come. It was baked hard. Awful, he cried. You're bloody awful. You're feeding me awful. We all thought it was a hell of a joke. And that's so typical of the life with Frog around. It was never a dull moment, even back then. I'm sure everyone here will have their own special memories of time spent with Frog, but Phil and I'd like to share a few of our own. As stated earlier, Frog brought Julia and their young family to Rocky, where he joined me and we planted research trials right around central Queensland there for a while. And it was on one such occasion when Frog was driving this big old 100 horsepower tractor, and he was having a bit of trouble keeping the road straight and parallel. Normally a good driver, and I'm sitting on the back up him for not being able to do so. So he yells out, well, you get on the bastard and do a better job. So we traded places and I got on and I couldn't even turn the bloody steering wheel. She'd broken a power steering pump belt and it was only his brute strength that he was able to control it at all. It's no secret that Frog liked a beer, and he'd often say at the end of the day when we're up there that, you know, a man can only drink so much water, Stewie. So we'd head to the nearest pub and he'd straight up order 4 schooners. The first one had hardly touched the sides, have the neck out of the second one. Meanwhile, I'm lighting up a smoke and taking the neck out of mine. Next thing you know, your shout, Stewie. I can still hear him saying it. I'm sure many of you have had similar moments in your life with him. Phil?
Yeah, a lot of fond memories, mate. A few shacks and a few sheds together. But anyway, one morning up there at the Great Lake, we went fishing, and anyway, Frog selected this rainbow flatfish. And after landing 7 to my 1 in 3 hours, the grin just got bigger and bigger every one he caught. All surfed along the top of the water. And when I said to him about playing them out a bit, nah, mate, he said, you've got to get them in fast, he said, before they get off. Needless to say, upon returning home, he went to Burnie and bought every rainbow flatfish in the place. Such was his passion for everyone and everything. John always thought how lucky he was to come to the farm and be there, but I know that we are the lucky ones to have been part of his life. Yeah.
Whilst Frog and Julia were in Rockhampton those years ago, he did a pre-season workout with my old team, Parkhurst. And it was a period of maybe 6 or 8 weeks while he was there. And to this day, whenever I catch up with anyone from that side, they still ask after Frog. How's Frog going? You heard from Frog lately? How many in the room would remember someone from 40 years ago that you'd only known for 6 or 8 weeks? And I reckon that speaks a hell of a lot to the character that was Frog Newman. In life, friends are the family we choose, and that's certainly been the case with our family. I know Mum and Dad loved him equally as well as any of the rest of us, as did my brothers and sisters. He may have started out as my friend, but he ended up a brother to all of us. He touched and enriched all our lives, and I got to say, I consider it a privilege to have had him in my life. He might be gone, but he definitely won't be forgotten.
I met John when I was 14 and he was 17. We got engaged when I was 17 and we were married when I was 18 and he was 21. We had 2 beautiful children, Chelsea and Nick, and we have beautiful in-laws, Jane and Matthew, and then we've had 5 absolutely adorable grandchildren, Mia, Alec, Lily, Fletcher and Priya. Our life has always been interesting, to say the least. We had a lot of fun when we were young, partied hard, enjoyed every single minute of it. We met a lot of people along the way, especially in and out of the football clubs that we've been involved with. John had a way and a presence that would make people feel like they were special, and he just was an easy person, well, we think, to get along with. He was loved from the minute he was met, and he was loved till the last minute when he left. He was told on a regular basis, and I think in life there's not much more than you can do but be that type of person. Money doesn't buy it, but the feelings that you give somebody and you get back are everything. And he was larger than life. He was unique. He had an amazing personality, very funny, witty, sometimes not always appropriate, but you just had to get over that. I remember saying to him one day, "Is there anything romantic you'd like to say to me?" And he said, "Yes, actually I would." And I'm thinking, oh wow, this is great. He goes, "You're like a tin of Mortine. When you're on a good thing, you stick to it." And that's what I'm going to do. So of course I pictured myself as a tin of Mortine, and that pretty much told me in his words what he thought. And that has lasted for 53 years. It doesn't happen to too many people in their life. I was fortunate enough to have had him, and I'm going to miss him like crazy. We had a banter that not many people had. I don't know really what else to say other than we love you, John. Always have, always did. And you were told from day one, and you were told at the very end. But I know that you were tired, and I know that you were unwell. So all we want was for you to be out of pain and rest. So I hope the next journey is the one that you expected that it might be. Love you, my husband, the kid's father, and the best grandfather ever, Julia.
Seems like yesterday, but it was long ago. Jane, it was lovely, she was the queen of my night. There in the darkness with the radio playing low, and the secrets that we shared, mountains that we moved, caught like a wildfire out of control, till there was nothing left to burn and nothing left to prove. And I remember what she said to me, how she swore that it never would end. I remember how she held me oh so tight. Wish I didn't know now what I didn't know then. Against the wind, we were running against the wind. We were young and strong, we were running against the wind. And the years rolled slowly past, and I found myself alone, surrounded by strangers I thought were my friends. Found myself further and further from my home, and I guess I lost my way. There were oh so many roads. I was living to run and running to live, never worried about paying or even how much I owe. Moving 8 miles a minute for months at a time,
Thank you. As Lil just said, John and Lil were married for 53 years, and Frog and I have been brother-in-laws for those 53 years. Fair to say we've been poles apart in many ways, but we were good mates, and as time went on, we became better friends. Nick's tasked me today to talk to you a little bit about the relationship between the Newman Bornstein family, and probably in particular Nan Bornstein. And one thing that John and I never ever argued about was just how lucky we were to have such a wonderful mother-in-law as Bornie. This is a bit of insurance. I've never used one of these. Pardon me. I've never used one of these in my life. But somebody said to me last night, don't worry when the cracks appear because the sunshine comes through then or the light comes through. One thing that I will qualify, those who knew John that knew that if you had a discussion with him, it lasted any more than probably 5 or 10 minutes to become quite animated in his voice and his ability to use a bucket full of expletives. But in a mixed company, he was always the gentleman. And he brought forward a great saying that I've adhered to, that if a woman came into the room when there was a bit of language going on, he'd always say, ducks on the pond, just to give us a warning. So today, personally, I'm going to enforce the ducks on the pond rule, but you'll know what it's about. The first story I'd like to relate is about our wonderful mother-in-law. And just before I start again, John and I shared something that he took to his grave, and I always used to say to him, a secret's only a secret when one is dead. And he took this secret to the grave with him, and I said to him once when he first came into the family, and we were talking about Nan Bornie and how close she was, and I said, I've got a name for her too. And he said, what? And I said, Dark Adder. Black Adder, sorry. He said, what? I said, you see that TV show of Rowan Atkinson and his little mate Baldrick? I said, and they come up with, they have a cunning plan. And I said, she has some bloody cunning plans for you and I. And she never let us down. The first story relates to John when he was very young, coming home with Julia one night after a party, and as you would do, you'd sit out the back with Nan, have a cup of tea and some biscuits and scones or whatever. And Thelma picked up pretty quickly. John wasn't in no condition to drive, so she commandeered the keys, escorted him to the spare bedroom, end of that. Now, for those people around about that age, and I think a lot of people even this age today would appreciate what I'm going to say, there was a disease that's still pretty rampant. I don't know the technical term of it, but I term it the rotation illness. And it was when you had a fair bit of ink in the well and you laid down the bed and your head rotated one way and your tummy rotated the other way. And that meant you had to get up rather quickly and empty the day's takings. Now, the big fella found this out. He had emptied it all right, but he didn't know where to put it. So he had to rip the singlet off, and that was the repository. So now he's done the business, where do I go from here? So he worked out down the backyard, buried in the chook yard. She'll never know the difference. Mind you, he's just starting to feel his way in the family, so he's got to be a bit careful. He doesn't hear a thing till next morning when Thel knocks the door and says, I've got your breakfast ready, John. Oh, how good's this? So out he goes. Now, Nan's kitchen was quite small and she only had a little 6-seater table. And if there's only 3 or 4 of us, she'd always sat one each end and 2 with your backs to the window, because when you looked at facing the window, all you could see was this great clothesline. And so he went out, and Nan kept him occupied while talking to him, and then put his breakfast on the table, and he said, I smell all these beautifully, perfectly cooked poached eggs. And there he was, his seat was right in the middle of the table looking at the clothesline. He had his first mouthful, he said, magnificent. He looked up, and there on the clothesline was this one piece of clothing, a singlet, pristine clean, not even a speck of a piece of carrot on it anywhere. And he said after that, every mouthful of egg he tried to swallow was like a cricket ball. And he said, I've got to get out of here quick. So he said, I've got to go, Mrs. B. And she said, no, John. She said, you're going to have a shower and tidy yourself up. You're not going to your mum and dad looking like this from my place. So in he went, and he gets in the car and he's making his getaway. He looks up at the clothesline, nothing on it. He said, I've got the dry horrors. So he's about to get in the car, and there she's waving out the door. He looks down on the front seat of his car, a little brown parcel wrapped in string. You guessed it. One chesty bond, size 48. A second occasion, Nan, where she got us both. Rame and I had East Wynyard Beach Store at the time, and I took the Sunday afternoon off to go upstairs and watch the footy. Big fella said, I'll come down and I'll watch the footy with you. And around about that time, I started to refer to him as Brother John. And we're sitting here watching footy, and up she comes, and she says, she used to do the ironing for Rame of a Sunday. She said, could you two big, strong boys do a little favour for me? Yeah, we knew she'd got us then. And she said, I've got a big table in the sunroom, in the front sunroom. She said, it's just too heavy for me to move. We said, yeah, we'll go up at half-time then. Good boys. So I walked along there, and a big fella said to me, something wrong here? And I said, why? He said, she's that bloody pig-headed and determined. He said, she would have found a way to get that bloody table out of there. Now, he said, there's something wrong. I said, well, no. I said, just... Anyway, we went towards the gate, the front gate. You looked up the drive on a bit of an incline. And normally you could see Nan's little car and the outline of the garage. And all we could see was a very, very large load of firewood. Dumped right in the middle of the driveway. Knowing that Nan had to use a car to get out tomorrow morning, he just looked at me and shook his head. He started to peel off to the singlet again. I said, let's go and have a look at this sunroom first. And here was a table with a top on about the size of a good-sized dinner plate and a little note with a couple of kisses and a love heart on it saying thank you. So 3 hours later, nearly 3 hours later, we put the last bit of wood on the stack, and then like a transfiguration out of nowhere, she appeared. 2 cold bottles of beer. And he wasn't too happy, the big fella. So I'm trying to hold the peace between him and Nan, and he's trying to get the 2 bottles off her, and she won't let him go. Oh, you've done a wonderful job, John. Oh, you've done a wonderful job. You know, I'd had to do this myself. And he just finished, he just grabbed the bottles and headed up towards the garage, and I could hear him saying something about ducks on the pond, but I wasn't too sure what it was. And I just spoke to her for a little while, and she just grinned at me, and I said, you would have moved this tonight, wouldn't you, if I hadn't been here, if we hadn't been here? She said, yeah, of course I would have done. I said, I worked all night. I said, no, you would have done. So we sat inside, and then he let this big belly laugh out as only he could. And he said, I said, what are you laughing at? He said, to add insult to injury, he said, I'm drinking my own beer. She's brought up the 2 big bottles from your place. He said, I've sacked wood for 3 hours and I'm drinking my own bloody beer. He said, what do you call her? I said, Blackadder. He said, she's black-hatted us. The third story that I relate probably relates a bit more to his football career when he was playing with Wynyard. The last year he played with Wynyard in 1975 when Tiger Dowling took Wynyard to a premiership. And he played a pretty good round of football, the big fella. Actually, his other brother, Victor Bornstein, he's here today. I think Victor might have been emergency for that grand final side in 75. But Frog unfortunately broke his leg that day. And if I just need to transgress a little bit to give you an idea, if you watch the football, AFL football now, you see the people going out in these little go-go mobiles to put someone on, and they have these lovely little lightweight sort of stretchers. Well, it wasn't the case in 1975. The shafts were 2 long pieces of solid timber, 8 foot long or 2.4 metres, 3 inch by 2 inch, 50 by 75, whatever it is, and a bit of rough old canvas, dry tacked every inch. Very uncomfortable, very heavy, sometimes heavier than the poor little buggers they took off, but certainly not in this case because John was starting to be a bit of a big fella by then. And of course at the gate there's quite a few people looking, and he couldn't raise his head, and he said, what's you like, Mac? And instead of having both legs parallel, he had one pointing about 30 degrees out and there was a bone sticking out through the skin on the other side. I said, she's not real good, mate. He said, I'm ducked on the pond, aren't I? I said, you're all right. So we had to go up to the head trainer's shed, and that was an old fellow by the name of Ted Poke, a lovely man, God bless him. But once again, there was no such thing as sympathy those days. If you showed any sort of weakness, you were a wimp, and the only thing, if you were tough and strong, you got some adulation. And old Ted used to love this sort of thing. He was a cruel old bugger. And John suffered his wrath one day as any young bloke that played football, Wynyard, or not so young either, you give you a mouthful of cheek, old Buzzard Guts, as he was known, would come back at you in a way that you wouldn't expect. And what he would do is, while you were out playing football, he'd put a little bit of Winter's Green or a bit of very hot spray, like a capsicum spray in the bottom of your underpants. And you see these young blokes come out and get dressed and they're going out and they're heading down the water. Old Buzzard would be standing at the door with a Viscount cigarette in his mouth, one of his only 2 teeth showing, watching them. And he said, as they'd go past, we're just starting to flick in. They'd give a bit of a twitch, and then their hands would go down in the Never Never area, and their face would look like the opening of Luna Park in Melbourne, if you've ever seen it, or Sydney. And then they'd be up, off back in the shower, trousers down, top half not touched, shower on, and it's something like trying to put the fire out in a volcano on Mount Etna with a water pistol. And so he'd got John a few weeks before, and John wasn't too happy about it. So when he had to go and put him on the table, and the rubbing down tables were nothing like they are now. They were made up of some tongue and groove flooring, and just a couple of trestles. And so he hasn't made a whimper coming up there. And I followed him, and he's got a bit of a following by this time. He's still starting to become a bit of a cult figure. And it seemed to be a hard man, so nothing said, not a whimper. And as soon as they laid him down on the table, all of a sudden, there was this little whimper, a little cry. It was just like a little animal sick or a bird had fell out of its nest. It was on the ground. I thought, oh, bloody hell. So I'd mooched over to him and I said, you're better than this, big man. I said, come on, lift your game. And I looked at his eyes. I've never seen a man in so much pain. And he looked at me and said, get the thing off me fingers. I said, what? And I looked down, and when they put the stretcher down, his hands were underneath the stretcher. And he had his weight, plus the weight of the stretcher, crushing his fingers against the hard table. And I got him to lift it, and as soon as I lifted up, all that came out was, oh, thank God. Oh, that's so nice. And after that, I thought, he's not going to be real happy. But we knew he was back to his best because he looked around. There was about 20 people in the room. We heard the ambulance pull up and said to Buzzard, if you don't get these rubbernecks out of here, I'm getting off this table and getting them out myself. So we decided it best we leave. One very brief story I'll finish on relates to my own dear son when he was again in the early days of the shop, and he was only about 8 years of age, and John and with Nick in tow come down from the farm, seeing if you wanted to go up to the farm for the day. Nick always calls Sean by his second name, Patrick, and off they went to the farm, and Frog took him out feeding the animals, the cows and the geese and so forth, and then come back. And I had to feed these rabbits. And at the time, Frog was breeding table rabbits, which for the uneducated is that they would be slaughtered and taken and sold for the table to be cooked. Now, he was looking at Patrick, and Patrick must have took a fancy this big rabbit up the top, a big white one. And Frog said, do you like him, Patrick? And he said, I do, Uncle John. He said, do you want him? He said, I'd love him, Uncle John. So one gentle hand, he brought the big white rabbit out of the cage and gently gave it to Sean, who cuddled it and felt the soft fleece or wool of it and skin. And then he gave it back to John, 2 big hands around his throat, a quick flick of the wrist, and he's dispatched him. Just as quick onto the skinning board, gut out, cleaned, washed, back to Sean, kidneys in, of course. Sean came home that night, walked through the back door, a little 8-year-old boy, tears streaming down his face. His little voice sobbing, Uncle John just gave me a rabbit. So, with that, I will say my farewell, very briefly. And this is a few words I've took from the great Irish poet, W.B. Yeats. I've spread my dreams under your feet, so when you think of me, tread carefully. There is another world, but it is not here. There's another life for me, but I know not where. No more dark, lonely nights, no more dusty roads to tread, No more winter days that shred. Now the wind is at my back, the sun warms my body through. Now's the bright light that will shine true, so again I can be with you. So when you think of me, tread carefully.
Heck, it's a lot of people. Hello, people. Dad's work history. As a young lad, Dad worked on the milk run for his Uncle Bob, up at 4 a.m. delivering bottles of milk in the local district. He was 15 when he went to the Stewarts and earned his keep by farm work like hay carting, picking up rocks and general farm duties. His first job was at APPM, the pulp. He was a cutter boy on number 4 and didn't go much on the 7-day roster. He pulled the pin after 2 years and went to Tasply, where his dad worked, and he was there for 20 years. While he was there, he attended night school, gaining trade experience, welding and fitting, and got his boiler ticket. He became the safety officer and went on to become workshop foreman and the union rep, and took voluntary redundancy in his 20th year. Not long after this, Macca asked if he was interested in working with them down the west coast at the Hellier mine with industrial trade hire. He worked his way into the store manager position, where the consumable bill was cut in half due to his no bullshit attitude on wasting products and gear. After a couple of years working there, a tender came up for a labour hire for the maintenance of the mill, and this was the establishment of FNES, also known as Frog Newman Engineering Services. He had a crew of blokes to daily maintain the mill and extra crew to cover the shutdowns. They had up to 53 blokes on the books during that time. Then he was approached by Chris Newitt about putting a fleet of light vehicles underground at Beaconsfield Gold Mine. At this stage, Nick had had enough of where he was working, and Dad asked Nick to go and help him, and they built the first vehicle at Dad's shed at the farm and realised it wasn't big enough. So Mum and Dad purchased Lee Chiver's workshop at Yolla, where Nick and Lee continued to build the rest of the fleet. At one point, they had 25 vehicles underground, with the full maintenance of the vehicles also including the infamous rockfall. They were involved with Beaconsfield for 10 years. At this stage, he was also contracted by Sandvik in Somerset to see if he had a couple of good blokes for a labour hire, which he did, and that continues today. The major contributor of Sandvik was Graham Evans, also known as Pin. The shed at Yolla was getting busy, and another work colleague of Nick's, Robbie Wally, came and ran the workshop as a farm maintenance and engineering workshop, and Scott Arnold came on board as an apprentice. Nick headed off to pursue his own farming career, and Mum had a hairdressing salon in Strawn for over 14 years. During this time, Mum and Dad also purchased the farm next door, which was penciled in to be planted with trees. Dad had it in his mind that he would like to continue his grandfather's tradition of running a butcher shop in Wynyard, and an opportunity came up for the abattoir and butcher shop, and that was the creation of Laponia Meats. Dad was very proud of his farm. He loved his cattle, his dog, and his manager, Julia. She was the brains behind all of the operations, but together they were a great team.
You can tell she's a school teacher. She's got very nice pronunciation and she likes to look at people. I don't want to look at anyone because I'll start bawling my eyes out anyway. So that reminds me, I've got a funny story about that. I needed a new pair of trousers for this occasion because the 10 I've got in my wardrobe unfortunately don't fit me anymore for some reason. I went round to Mum's the other morning, we've talked about it, and she said, "I'll try some of your father's on." Oh, yeah. She bought these bastards out, they're about this wide. I said, as if that's going to fit me. She said, oh, you might get a shock. Anyhow, here they are. I can't believe that. That's embarrassing. But anyway, just going to run through a couple of childhood memories and a couple of stories. I had a great childhood. I seen more by the time I was 10 than most 30-year-olds have seen, I'd say. I didn't miss many training runs, and I seen a few parties by an early age. It obviously didn't hurt me because I'm still here now and I think I've turned out all right. I often had the comment as a young bloke, geez, you would have had hard childhood with Frog, your old man. And I'd just say, have you met my mother? He never smacked me, he never flogged me, and he was never bad to me. But when he gave me that look, I knew whatever I was doing, I wasn't going to be doing that anymore. Mum was the one to deal the old curry powder for swearing, or the old odd jug cord round the legs for being a smart ass. As I grew old and he grew slow, he might have been known to throw a thing or two at me, but luckily none of it never got me. I, like most people in this room, could tell 100 stories about Dad. The majority couldn't be said in front of children or old ladies. The couple that I am going to tell, there will be a few expletives, but I'm not going to change that much because that's how he was and that's why we loved him. He said the other night when he was crook, he said, if I die, go and put that straight on Facebook so your mother doesn't have to answer 400 phone calls tomorrow morning, will you? And we didn't, and we probably should have done. But anyway, another more recent story was he watched his last AFL grand final there the other week and he was sitting there watching it and a bit of entertainment came on there. He said, what's this shit? And one of the kids said, oh, that's Snoop Dogg. And he said, what? They said, that's Snoop Dogg. He said, more like Snoop Flog. Just another quick one. He told me this when I was a young bloke and I laughed, and I've laughed my whole life. And I thought, unfortunately, if he ever dies, I'm going to tell that at his funeral. I reckon it was when he went to live with the Stewarts. Anyhow, they were carting in hay one day, and I reckon it was for old Bob Steers. He used to go and cart a heap of hay and a few young blokes around there. Anyhow, he said it was stinking hot. He was thirsty as a bastard, hungry, always starving. That's where I got it from. Anyhow, he said the old woman of the house come out and said, dinner's up, come on boys. So they went down in there, washed their hands, and he sat down on this chair and he was straight into it. And the father of the house looked at him and said, John. So Dad put his knife and fork down and thought, bloody hell. Anyhow, the old boy of the house, he said a prayer, thank God for this food we are about to receive. And Dad said to me, and he looked me straight in the eyes and said, pass the fucking butter. As I said, I apologise for swearing, but anyhow, if you didn't like swearing, you wouldn't be here supporting him anyway, so. There's another little one there. This one's about Phil Stewart, and I laughed when I seen him walking up here a minute ago. He's chewing on some chewing gum or fucking lolly or something. I laughed about this in my own head. Dad and Stewie spent a fair bit of time up the lakes. Stewie built a couple of shacks up there, and Dad was fortunate enough to do the same, and we spent a bit of time up. We built a shack there all together and bloody had some real good times. He was telling me this story the other night. They pulled into Deloraine, as you usually do. You usually get your groceries there in Deloraine and buy a couple of boxes worth of piss, and as you're going up round the hill there to get to the lakes, you might have a couple. Anyhow, Stewie comes out and gets in the bus and he's got a baby Swede about as big as an apple. Dad looked at him and anyhow, Stewie fucking bit into this Swede. And he looked over at Dad and said, he used to call him Brother John, He looked over at Dad and said, "Brother John, do you like swede?" Dad said, "Yeah, bloody oath I do." He said, "You want a bite?" He said, "Yep." So Stewie handed him over this little swede. Dad undone the window and threw the bastard as far as he could throw it. Philip said, "What did you do that for?" He said, "You dirty bastard, fancy eating that in my bus. Not only is it cattle tucker, I've got to hear you chewing on it." Yeah. He hated the noise of chewing. It's bred into him to hate it, and I don't like it either. So, unfortunately, that's one of his traits I've got. Another quick one there. I've been doing a fair bit of farming the last few years by myself and pretty independent. I like to try and do things as much as I can myself, but I had some cattle turn up one day from Piranha and had them in the yards around there, and there was a mad bastard amongst them. No good at all. Anyhow, I couldn't deal with it by myself, so I rang the old man and said to the boys at the workshop, "Got much on for an hour, I need a hand." He said, No, you're right, ring them. So I rang Robbie and Scott, good mates of mine up the workshop, said, "Come and give me a hand for an hour." "Righto," they said. They come down in there and I said, "I've got a mad beast in these yards I need a hand with." And at this stage, Mia had just given birth to our first child. Jane had given birth to Mia, our first child. She was inside of the house looking out the window near the cattle yard to see what the commotion was. But anyhow, I went in these yards and I said to these boys, "Be careful, it's like this, you're no good." And we went in around the corner and this thing talked to us. And Scott Arnold, being the youngest and fittest, I pushed him in front of it first. And Robbie and I took off outside, and Jane, that's hilarious, that's all she could see out the window. By this stage, I could hear a four-wheeler rumbling around the road, because Mum and Dad only lived around the road a kilometre. Anyhow, pulls up, Dad gets off this motorbike. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "This bastard in this yard, geez, he's no good." "Yeah, I'll show you how to do this," he said. "Big, tough John." "Oh, you weak bastard," he said to me. Anyhow, he walks around the corner and this thing took to him. And I got my old yards are an old dairy and I've converted it to undercover yards, so big concrete walls. This thing took to him and I reckon it missed him by half an inch. And he walked around the corner, casual as you like, looked at us three and said, "Fucking hell, that thing's mad." And I've got another mad cow story. I've only had 2 mad cows and he's been amongst them each time. Anyhow, same thing, bought some cattle, got them home, this thing in the yard's mad. I rang him up and said, "Come and give me a hand, will you?" "Righto," he said. He liked it when I asked him to help me. He said, "Come and give me a hand." Anyhow, he comes round there and this thing was mad. So I walks in the yard and this thing half takes to me. It jumps a fence up out of an 8-foot cattle yard. It got out of it. So I was running across the paddock to shut a gate. Anyhow, as I was doing that, I was looking behind me and it was chasing me. And I took off. And I jumped up on this pile of rocks. I was growing a heap of spuds and there was a pile of rocks with a few blackberries on it. And this thing took off. I was 100 metres away from him. He's behind me. And all I could hear was him belly laugh, just laughing his head off as he did. And all I could hear him roaring out, "You weak bastard." I said, "Oh, yeah?" And he was laughing. He was laughing that hard, his false teeth fell out. He put them back in and he just yelled out, "You weak bastard." I said, "Oh, yeah, weak bastard, eh?" Same thing, he's in the paddock on the four-wheeler. He said, "You need to learn how to, these mad bastards." He said, "I'll show you how to do it." I said, "Get in here then." So he rode this four-wheeler into this paddock. There was a Mexican standoff. This Charolais big steer weighed about 650 kilos, had his head down snorting. Dad was on a big red 300 four-wheeler looking at each other. I'm standing on these rocks. Anyhow, this beast started carrying on and Dad said, "Come on then." So this thing took to him. Four-wheeler straight up in the air, laid on his back, and then I was the one in hysterics. I was laughing at him. This thing had his head down. And all I yelled out was, "You weak bastard." And as soon as I said it, he got up, and then there was two Newmans standing on a pile of rocks. That thing it took off. It went through 4 internal fences I had. It went through a wallaby fence with 4 barbed wires on top of it, straight over Mark Beamish's place, who was living it behind me at the time, straight into the bush, and I've never seen it since. There's no Mayo. Never seen it since. Another one is he had some, as Chelsea said, he had underground mine vehicles at Beaconsfield. They were Nissan Patrols. We converted them up at Yolla and built heavy trays and roof canopies for them. Anyhow, we had a fair bit of trouble with them cracking in behind the chassis, in behind the cab on the chassis rails. He said, "We're going to have to go up to Beaconsfield and have a look. Tell me what you reckon. We'll make some fish plates and fix these chassis up." I said, "Righto." About middle of January, stinking hot. We gets up there and gets all our safety gear on, and your cab lamp and your oxygen and all your stuff. Anyhow, I hadn't been down Beaconsfield before, and so we're in the chute, just him and I, which is a little elevator. Our workshop was about 700 metres straight down. So all you see is dirt, and then a sleeper, then a bit of paint on it, 20 metres, 40 metres. Anyhow, it gets about 100 metres, and I can see him mucking around with his cab lamp. He's there tapping on it and mucking around with his battery. He looked over at me and said, "What's wrong with this bastard? It's not working." I said, "Take your sunglasses off, you silly bastard." Still had his sunglasses on from up the top. As I said, I've got millions of these stories, but we don't want to be sitting here all day listening to that. But just another one, from the other night. He said, "Oh, how many poppies are you growing?" I said, "A few." "Why is that?" He said, "By the feeling I've got here and this morphine these blokes are punching into me, so I reckon you have to go and grow 20 more acres to make up for it." The poor bar, he was right, but anyway. My last little story I'll say is, and I only found this one out yesterday, I think, from Mum. As most of you have seen on Facebook, Mother likes to do this gem. What's it mean, Mother? Gratitude, empathy, and mindfulness. That's me all over. Someone says, "Did you see your mother's post?" I said, "No." Anyway, Mum had this jar there at home, and she said to Dad, I want you to write down something on there, once a week or whatever it is, to show your gratitude and what you're happy about." So, to her surprise, he put a note in there. He wrote on this note, "My family is the most important thing in the world to me. I'm very grateful." Mum would have thought, what a nice thing for him to write. Anyhow, a few days later, she checked in the container again and he wrote another note. And it said on it, "I'm grateful for Netflix because all this bullshit on TV." Anyhow, that's just a few stories. As I said, we could go on all day, but yeah, that's just a few stories from Dad.
Yep. My childhood memories of growing up with Dad. I'm grateful for a wonderful childhood filled with fun times at the footy clubs, getting a cherry ripe for selling the raffle tickets around the boundary fence, the pulp Christmas parties, playing with friends, special times with our Newman cousins at the farm and with the Bornstein cousins at the beach. I had a beautiful horse that I adored. I loved being with the animals, climbing trees and making mud pies. I always felt loved and safe. Well, apart from the following story. This one's titled Driving Lessons. When I was 16, Dad offered to give me driving lessons, which I have to be honest, I wasn't that keen on, as he wasn't that patient, nor did he give clear instructions. He asked me to get in the driving seat of the column manual Cortina and drive him around to Aldina. I didn't want to be seen dead in that car. I was so embarrassed by it that I used to ask Mum to pick us up at the end of the Yolla School Lane so no one saw us in it. Anyway, we headed off around to Aldina, which, by the way, was a gravel road. And when I came to a sharp bend where near Hopes lived, I fishtailed it and Dad went off his nut. So I pulled up, got out, slammed the door and told him to get stuffed. And I started to walk home. I clearly recall him driving further up the road, making a U-turn, and as he zoomed back past me towards home, he signalled. Needless to say, there were no more driving lessons. The next story I'd like to share is called The Black Cat. I loved summer on the farm during the hay carting season, not because of the hay, but more because all the hot boys from the neighbourhood came round to help. And there was often a barbecue and drinks and fun times had by all later. This particular evening, Mum's friend came to visit and informed us that Mum's black cat Midnight was squashed on the road near our place. Mum was so upset. We went and scooped poor Puss off the ground, wrapped him up in a tea towel and took him home. When Dad and the blokes finished hay carting, Mum told him about Puss, and she was insistent on having a Catholic burial for him near the old dairy, which we did. And Mum said her prayers for the faithfully departed to her beloved cat. As Dad was placing Puss in the grave, he said something to the effect of, "Well, that cat looks a bit skinny. I don't think it's Midnight." To which Mum was furious and stated, "You never liked my cat." She was cross that he'd questioned it, so he proceeded to give it the burial it deserved. A few nights later, Mum and Dad were in bed. Mum still very sad. She even gave herself a cold sore over it. And she was missing a cat. I went out to the shed to get some wood to put on the fire. Guess who was sitting on the wood pile? It was Midnight. I took him inside and told Mum I had a surprise for her. I asked her to close her eyes and then went into the bedroom and I gently threw the cat to Mum. Mum was beside herself. She cried. She was so excited to see her cat. Then Dad piped up and said, "I told you it wasn't your fucking cat." It was so funny. And then Mum crying, she said, "Well, whose cat did we bury?" He said, "I had no idea, but that feral bastard got the best Catholic service any cat I know." The next story I have is called Smacked with the Belt. I think I was 15 at the time and I had the hots for a bad boy. Surprise, surprise. I ended up with a good one. I don't know how that worked. And I wanted to meet this bad boy at the Burnie show the next day. And Mum said, "Under no circumstances are you meeting that boy at the Burnie show." Of course, being a teenage girl, I may have protested a bit, said a few choice words back to her, which resulted in me being sent to my room and Mum shouting, "You wait until your father gets home." And I thought, shit, I might actually get into real trouble. It was getting late. I heard Dad arrive home from footy training. Mum was quick to fill him in on all the drama, and he didn't sound too happy. She instructed Dad to deal with me. I heard him coming up the passage with a belt in hand, cracking it like this. I started to worry. He came in and spoke firmly to me about the way I had spoken to Mum. He said he was disappointed, which hurt me more. And then he leaped down and he quietly whispered, "When I count to 3, you better make this sound real." He stood up beside me, looked at me and went, I was like, "Yeah, I'm ready." He counted to 3 very loud so Mum could hear, while she's singing out, "You deserved it!" He cracked that belt 3 times on that bed and I screamed like nothing else. And then he got down real quietly next to me. He said softly to me, "Don't you ever tell her that I did that." I said, "I promise I won't." But at my 21st, we may have shared that and she was not impressed. In all honesty, I don't recall Dad ever smacking us. Like Nick said, he threw things because he couldn't catch us. He was a gentle giant with a deep voice. He had the biggest hands and the biggest heart. He also had a great sense of humour, and in most recent times, whilst at the hospital, going through everything we were going through, Mum and I were in this particular room with him, sitting beside him. He wanted everything dark, quiet, no phones, no TV, didn't read anything, and wanted silence, which is pretty hard for Mum and I, but we did it. But this particular night we were sitting around and he had his head up against the window with a nice cold breeze coming through. And Mum offered to close the window for him, and she leaned over him, wiggled her boobs on purpose, to which he smiled and said, "Well, that would have worked wonderful once. Now I couldn't get a hilt in my kilt if Miss Australia walked in." We laughed that loud and Mum pranced around the room like a model and replied, "Well, I was Miss Rowland in 1975. He said, "Exactly, was." The day before he passed, Nick, Ian Stewart, Mum and I were in with Dad. Nick and Ian were talking about travels and Dad sat up beside them and in a chair to join in the conversation and have a cup of tea. I was laying down on the fold-out bed that I'd been sleeping on in his room, not far from Mum. There was a bright fluorescent light underneath the bed that illuminated. And I thought I was being discreet, and I said to Mum, "Could you turn that light off? It's pissing me off, it's right in my eyes." And Dad from the other side of the room looked at me and he did this. I'm like, "Oh, so we're playing charades now." So I responded with, he went, "Oh, fuck me." He pointed back down to the light. He said, Mum and Nick were laughing. I said, "I've got no idea what he's talking about." They said, "We do." Dad goes, "Big fucking deal." No wonder I didn't get it. I never get jokes. But I've decided I'll take that with me in my life, and instead of the lovely gem quote of "don't sweat the small stuff," it's going to be Well, Dad, we didn't know that next day would be your last, or that we'd have to say goodbye to you so fast. In a world where heroes come and go, well, God just took the only one I know. So I'll hold you as tight as I can, probably too tight, until I see your face again. But until then, I'm jealous of the angels around the throne tonight. Thank you for the memories, but most of all, thank you for being my dad. I've loved you all my life, and I will desperately miss you for the rest of my life.
My father had so much to tell me, things he said I had to know. Don't make my mistakes, there are rules you can't break, but I had to find out on my own. Now when I look at my own son, I know what my father went through. There's only so much you can do. You're proud when they walk, scared when they run. That's how it always has been between fathers and sons. It's a bridge you can't cross. It's a cross you can't bear. It's a word you can't say, the things you can't change, no matter how much you care. So you do all you can, but then you gotta let go. You're just part of the flow of a river that runs between fathers and sons. Your mother will try to protect you, hold you as long as she can. But the higher you climb, the more you can see. That's something that I understand. One day you'll look at your own son. There'll be so much that you want to say. But he'll have to find his own way on the road he must take, the course he must run. That's how it always has been between fathers and sons. It's a bridge you can't cross. It's a cross you can't bear. It's a word you can't say, the things you can't change, no matter how much you care. So you do all you can, then you gotta let go. You're just part of the flow of the river that runs between fathers and sons.
I thought there'd be 20 or 30, that's good. So I'll be talking about being the son-in-law to Frog. I'll keep it fairly quick. I can see a few Frog devotees trying to edge towards the bar. Shepherd that man. Once again, we're a bit of ducks on the pond. If there's any cuss words uttered, we're not meaning to frighten children or be rude to ladies. It's purely in the interest of historical accuracy. There's no point glossing over Frog with glitter, for whilst at Catholic school he may have enjoyed wearing robes and carrying candles, he was no angel. So I grew up in Somerset, and as a team I knew a little bit of Frog's notoriety. I didn't follow the footy though. I had a mate who lived around the back on Elizabeth Street, around the back of the ply mill. So I'd see this big fella buzzing around on a forklift now and then, looking fairly focused. I reckon he's probably planning what to inflict on the boys at training that night. So Frog's story's a legend. My first real life one was probably, I think, about the early 90s. There's a shindig at Uncle Robin's farm at Elliot, and it's down at the Seabrook Creek because my cousin Philip played for Yolla with Frog. I was up the top, one of the paddocks walking down towards the creek, and out of the blue this big old Valiant Chrysler something or other came hearing across the paddock way too fast with a car full of blokes. He was going woof, 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 over the humps. The big fella behind the wheel like this. And I thought, who's that mad dog? And he's headed towards the boundary fence. Needs to be going down that way to the creek. But he's going way too fast. He starts spinning on the wheel. No change of direction. He's under brakes and he just ploughs into the one tree on that section of boundary fence. He hit it square on. Doors flung open, bloke started piling out. Big frog gets out. Fucking hell! And I remember Tony Lucas came out of the back seat, staggered out, hard out on, all crooked, pair of broken sunglasses hanging off his face. I don't really know the others. It might have been Plopsy Phillips in there. Could have been Wilbur Watts. I won't guess. Peter Byrne might have been in there. But moving on, Bull Neal could have been in there. Anyway, knowing what I know now, Frog's main concern was not for his mates, although he would have wanted them fit for the next match, of course. It wasn't for the car that was trashed. It was, what would he tell Julia? And you better believe it. Little did I know then that John Evil Knievel Newman was to be my future father-in-law. Several years later, some 24 years ago, Chelsea snagged me, half her luck. I hope to be out on parole next year. A lot of people are surprised to know at times that Chelsea is Frog's daughter, as she's quite the opposite to Frog in many ways, but they do share some of the milder traits. When I first met Frog and Julia, I shook Frog's big hand, I matched his grip and looked him in the eye, and there's no mucking around. He was a bloke and I was a bloke who was keen on his daughter and respected him being protective of her. If Frog had a type in mind for his daughter, I was probably not it. I wasn't 6'2" and 100 kilos. I'd played bugger all footy. I'd played soccer at school and was recently running the coastal carnivals at the time. I was a Liberal voter and I was about to head to the police academy, which Frog never failed to refer to as the piggery. But I soon realised there were no issues. Frog was happy if his daughter was happy and cared for, and I did actually snag a good one there. Frog was the big fella, but I wasn't one of his players, so I didn't tippy-toe around him. I liked to stir him up. I gave him 3 grandchildren, so what was he going to do? To be fair, Chelsea did chip in there, to her credit. Apart from calling Frog and John, I used some other affectionate names. I'm not suggesting that these names were designed to be irritating. Who would do that? But in order from least irritating, there was Big John, Jonathan, Johnny, John Boy, Froggy. You like that one. And occasionally, when I was safely out of reach, I'd call him Toad. And I'd get that sideways sneer. When I got one up on Frog or did something he considered a bit too extravagant, he would call me, "You liberal bastard," which I quite liked. I would call him a closet liberal, if he didn't like that so much. He didn't quite come out. I reckon I just needed 6 more months. That might surprise many of you, but Frog was hard on gear. I reckon he had the finesse of a sledgehammer and a chainsaw. I told him at some stage. I reckon his mantra was, if it don't fit or don't work, force it harder. A couple of examples of this. Every tradie knows there's a tool for every job. Well, Frog had a small toolkit. He was at my house many years ago. We had a meeting, teed up a meeting with a fella for insurance or finance or something, just to save him going to Yolla. And we're going to have a cuppa, but it turned out there's no milk. And Frog said, "You got any condensed milk?" And I happened to find a tin, and I was going to get an opener, of course, and "Give it here." And he snatches a knife out of the knife block. Beautiful little, fine, German, expensive knife. And he's about to smash it into this tin. I said, "Get out of that, you idiot. What are you doing? It's a $100 knife." He's bligger me. And so I took it off him, and he snatched another one, which is a smaller, cheaper knife. He was too impatient to wait for me to find an opener. He bashed it in the tin, busted the tip off the knife, of course. Sadly, it didn't end up in his cuppa. And a similar vein, but we'd been fishing at Sisters Beach. We caught a few flatty and other things. Back at the shack, one of these flatty must have been still alive. Alec had this brand new Christmas present bloody bucket of fishing gear, and Frog grabs this knife. It's got a nice, long, slender, fine-bladed filleting knife. Gets this bloody knife and this flathead, chunk, and bends the knife in half. Oh, sledgehammer Newman. I said, what are you doing? You see that knife? Bloody oath. Alec's nearly in tears. Heap of shit. I'll buy him another one. So you could understand why Nick and I kept our tools locked away and made excuses as to why they were not available. To be fair though, Frog did have finesse in some areas. On the dance floor, he was surprisingly light and graceful on his feet, which I witnessed a few times, and his handwriting was immaculate. I wish I could dance half as well and write half as well. Excuse me. Frog loved the lakes, as you heard, and getting out in the boat. I helped build the shack at the lakes in the early 2000s. He loved nothing more than taking the grandkids fishing and seeing their joy and excitement when they caught a fish. I loved the lakes for the alpine environment and peace and quiet and beers by a fire. Rocking around in a boat in freezing conditions, catching no fish and sucking in fumes, not so much. When the kids were little, we had a rule there were 2 adults with kids in the boat. When the weather was average and Frog was wanting to go fishing, it was like there was secretly drawing straws to see who had to go out. But someone always did because we didn't want to see him disappointed. One trip, we went fishing. Frog and I had the boat on my bus, and probably one of my boys were there. Weather couldn't have been that good because we're the only bloody car at the Swan Bay ramp. Backed her in, shot her off, parked the bus, walked down, and Frog's swearing and grumpy. What's the matter? Battery's flat. Didn't you check it? No. You got any jump leads? Well, yeah, well, they won't reach. Drive your car in. I'm not driving my car out that far. You got any tools? Take your battery out. I'm not taking my battery out of my bus. That'll be good. Anyway, so he frigged around for a while longer, and he goes, back the fucking trailer in. We'll get out of here. So we did. I said, yeah. I said, yeah, that's sensible. We'll fix it back there. We'll probably have a crack tomorrow. I go, yes, back to beers by the fire. So I don't want to denigrate his abilities. Of course, Frog had the highest level bloke ticket. He was capable with his hands. He loved designing, sketching and fabricating projects, which was just as well because a lot of gear needed repairing. One part of the journey I enjoyed was on the odd occasion, not infrequently, Julia ringing Chelsea, a bit distraught, sometimes hysterical, and I'd pick up on the vibe. I'd get over Chelsea's shoulder. Quick, what's going on? Put it on speaker. And, it's John. Yeah, what's he done? Oh, he's bashed something with a hammer. He's got metal stuck in his eye and he won't go to the doctor. Yeah, that'd be him. Wouldn't wear bloody safety glasses, would he? And another one. Oh, what's the matter? Oh, it's John. Put it on speaker. What's he done this time? Oh, he was fixing something or other, I can't remember. I told him not to. He did it anyway. He's bugging it. It's going to cost thousands of dollars. And my favourite, same story. Oh, you're never going to believe it. Yeah, I will. Yeah, what's he done this time? You know the pile of logs down in the paddock? He's cutting and splitting firewood. Yeah. He lit a fire near them, and now all the split wood's on fire. And now the logs are on fire too. He's down there with a tractor trying to put it out. Hilarious. At home, we've got a cathedral ceiling, and a ceiling fan, push the air down from the wood heater. It's got a winter and a summer switch for obvious reasons. Push it down, downdraft in the summer to cool you. In the winter, it's in reverse to suck it up, disperse the air nicely. The frog didn't agree. He said, "What's that fan? That's going the wrong way." I said, "No, it's not. It's going the wrong way. I've got a boiler ticket. I ran the boilers." "Well, this isn't a boiler. This is my living room. It's going the right way." "You don't know what you're talking about, de Bomford." I said, "It's got a winter switch and a summer switch, frog. In the summer, I'll switch it over." "You liberal bastard." We argued over that over the years, even until he's on his deathbed. I sent Chelsea a message that said I was going to flick that switch over. I think I got a grin. First time he's ever listened to me, that bastard. Anyway, one last little thing. I thought many years ago at home in the kitchen, because he was obviously the big beer drinker, he poured himself a glass of water and sculled it. And he saw me and he goes, "Don't you tell anyone you saw me do that." It was certainly an interesting and fun experience having Frog Newman as a father-in-law. His dry humour provided plenty of laughs, whether he intended it or not. There were also plenty of hair-pulling and WTF moments. Just ask Nick and Julia. He may be a legend, but he was just Pop, John, Dad and Frog to us, and a good family man. He'll be missed, but certainly not forgotten. Thank you.
My time with John started many years ago when Nick and I started seeing each other. Once he knew I liked to fish, could back a boat and didn't get seasick, he decided we were going to be friends. We spent many trips together fishing, some with a lot of silence, enjoying nature, and some I enjoyed listening to his stories. This went on for many years, with each of the grandchildren getting to enjoy these moments too, but with less of the silence, much to John's disgust. There were some interesting times on our fishing trips. Not many went by without something going wrong, and all ending with a statement, "Don't you tell anyone about this." I'm not going to stand here and betray his trust, but I can give you an example of one trip, as I wasn't the only one there. In the early years, we spent a lot of time at Strawn. John had got up and decided we were going fishing. It wasn't uncommon for him to give us a maximum of 10 minutes to be ready. He convinced Chelsea and her friend it was a beautiful day and they wouldn't get seasick. First, we went to the fish farm to try and fish around the nets, but were soon chased off by security. We then proceeded to head to a new fishing spot, full noise, when we came to an abrupt stop onto a sandbar. Once we peeled ourselves off the front of the boat, John said to the girls, "Quick, put your rods in and make it look like you're fishing." I got the job of jumping in and pushing us off out of view of people standing on the boat ramp. "Hurry up before those bastards will start gawking at us." After getting us off the sandbank, we ended up having a pretty successful day of fishing. The fish were caught, and as John was putting it out of its misery, belting it, blood spurted all over Chelsea and her friend's nice white T-shirts. Needless to say, the friend never came fishing with us again. This is one of the memories I'll have from these adventures. I'm now going to provide you with a poem that the family's picked. As most of you know and probably have heard, John spoke at many funerals, so we think it's fitting. I read of a man who stood to speak at funerals of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted first came the date of birth and spoke the following date with tears, but he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years, for the dash represents all the time that they spent alive on earth, and now only those who love them know what that line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash.
One time, Pop Mum and I went out fishing in the boat at Sisters Beach. I was about 11 and finally got a fish on. I said to Pop, "Help me," because I couldn't reel it in. Pop said, "It's probably the size of a goldfish. Use those noodle arms and get into it." I kept reeling it in, and when it got to the surface, Pop said, "Jesus, Lily, that's a fat bastard. No wonder he had trouble getting it in." And just as he went to get the net, which would not have fit this big barracuda in, it snapped my little came-up fishing rod in half, snapped the line with it, and took Pop's favourite lure. And I would tell you what he said next, but Mum said I could not.
There are many words someone could use to describe John. Tough, funny, racist, footy legend, dickhead. But for me, I knew him as Pop, and he was the best Pop I ever could have asked for and more. He would call me up early in the morning and ask if I would like to go fishing. And before I could even say yes, he'd say, "Right, I'll be there in 15 minutes. And then when he came flying up the driveway with the boat on the back to my house, he would get out of the car and say, "Why the bloody hell aren't yous ready?" And I'd say, "Because we only knew we were going 15 minutes ago." And he'd say, "Bullshit, how long does it take to get a fishing rod and a wide brim hat?" Going anywhere with Pop, whether it was to the footy or the Cam River, was like going out with Russell Coit, because something would always go wrong. Now I'll tell a story of a time Pop took Fletcher and I fishing at Sisters Beach. Pop had just recently bought a new fish finder, and he was telling me all about it. So we headed out with high expectations to reach the bag limit for Flatty. Boy, were we wrong. It was going well at first. Pop had his heart and soul set into this fish finder, and he was telling us, "Drop a line here, boys. The TV says there's fish." So of course we did just that, and yeah, we caught a few bits and pieces here and there, but nothing special or of legal size. So we were fishing all around Sisters Beach for about 2 hours, relying on this fish finder. And then all of a sudden we heard Pop say, "Hang on a minute, look here," as the fish finder says, "Restarting demo." Pop went off his head. I knew you were too good to be true, you Chinese heap of bullshit. Telling us there's fish here when there isn't. I knew you were no good to be true the moment I laid eyes on it. Another good time we had with Pop was the time Dad, Fletcher and I did a trip to the West Coast with him a year or so ago. We went on a road trip looking at potential fishing spots and shacks all the way to Tema. We were on our way back to stay the night at Toll Timbers, and we were on the Tarkine Road, and we pulled over to have a toilet stop near the Arthur River. Just as Pop was doing his fly back up, with his back turned to us and the road, a fire truck came round the bend and turned on the lights and sirens. It scared the bejesus out of Pop. I think it was the first time I'd ever seen him jump. He turned around and flipped off these 2 volunteer firefighters and yelled, "You pack of bloody bastards!" And after that, he went all red in the face because he was the only one who got startled by the sirens, and we all laughed our heads off at him. In the car, he went off his head that there wasn't a fire within a bull's roar. That's barely a scratch on all the good times I had with Pop, but I just thought I'd share a few with you tonight. Pop was my best mate, and I'm really sad that he's gone so soon. But I have no regrets, because the things we did together while he was around are irreplaceable. And I'll never find a better fishing buddy again in my lifetime. So thanks to you, Pop, and all the memories you made with me and the rest of your family and friends. Rest in peace until we meet again. Love you, from your best mate, Alec.
Hello, my name's Ray Parry. I'm past president of the Darwin Football Association, past secretary, and currently president of the Yellow Football Club. So I'm going to share a few little bits and pieces and a bit of history of John's life in Darwin football. I actually knew John just before that. In the old, at school, in the old area schools competition we used to have when the country schools went into secondary grades, we used to play against each other. John was playing with Yola, of course, and I was at Boat Harbour. And we used to play places like Ridgely and Rihanna and Natone, Sprint, Forest, I think we used to play there too. In fact, the first free kick I ever got in football was at Fogg's expense. His headmaster was umpiring one day, and as has been said before, that he didn't get on very well with his headmaster. I think I got in Fogg's way, and I got a mouthful of swear words, and John got sent off, and I got the free kick. I think it's the only kick I got all day. Much of John Newman's story in the association happened in the 70s and 80s. At the same time, I was developing a career in umpiring, which is totally opposite to what John was doing with football. John played junior football at Wynyard before 1976. He got the reserves coaching job at Yola. 1977 he won the club's best and fairest in the seniors, and in 78 he got given the senior coaching role. In 1979, Yola, which had never won a premiership since the association started in 1951, he got them to the flag and followed that up with the following 2 years. I don't know what the Yola committee were thinking, but they decided not to give him the job in 1982, so he went down to Somerset and got the job down there and won a flag down there, the fourth one in a row. One thing I remember from 1982, I was assigned to umpire a game between Somerset and Sprint down at Somerset, and back in them days there was no interchange as such. You was 19th and 20th man. You only got to run if somebody got injured or the coach wanted to sacrifice somebody. And they were playing Sprint, and Sprint were new to the competition and weren't very good. At three-quarter time, I think they were 20-something goals up at Somerset. And they kicked a goal early in the last quarter, and Frog spotted Lyndon Broomall playing at centre-half back, played a pretty good game, and he was talking to the bloke he was playing on. And Frog, not wanting to appear soft, had to make, if he was going to replace somebody, had to make it like he was punishing him. So he yells out I heard him yell out to Lyndon. He said, "It's not a picnic." He said, "Don't even talk to him." He said, "You're talking to the bloke there you're playing on." He said, "Get off." So he sent him off for an early shower. And a couple of minutes later, Alan missed a fairly hard shot at goal. That's Alan, his brother, missed a fairly hard shot at goal, and Frog yelled out to him. He said, "If you can't kick properly," he said, "get off." Alan only kicked 15 goals that day. But that was John. I sort of digressed from what I had there. He coached the 1982 premiership at Somerset, and then did a couple of years, did the next year at Somerset, then he went to Burnie, came back and coached Somerset another year. Then 86 he went back up to Yola, won another 3 premierships in a row in 88, 89, 90. And then he had another stint a little bit later on in 98 and 99. In 1997, Yola won 1 game and finished on the bottom of the ladder. He took Yola in 98 to the grand final, where they were beaten by Yeoman, but he took them from from last to second in 1 year. But that was about the end of his coaching there. So his years of coaching in the Darwin was 14 years coaching, 7 premierships, 5 DFA Lightning premierships, 3 times DFA representative coach. When the DFA started the under-17 competition in 1999, it was administered mainly by Rex Frankham, Barry Walker and Warren Parker, but Frog Newman Engineering was the major sponsor and financed pretty much the competition, and Frog was made patron. In 2011, in my second year as Darwin president, it coincided with the 60-year anniversary of the Darwin, and I got the services of Richard Lakeland and Les Snowy Allen to pick a team of the Darwin for the first 60 years. When it came to the coach, it was pretty well closed case. Was John with his 7 premierships, 3 more than anybody else had ever done. We've got a couple of blokes had 4, but there was no other choice really, and the centre half forward spot was pretty much his as well as a lot of the people that he coached. At that point, I became interested in the statistics and the history of the Darwin and things like that. The following year, I put a proposal forward that the Premiership Coaches Trophy be named in John's honour, which was adopted and has happened ever since. So whenever somebody wins the Premiership, the trophy they receive is called the John Newman Trophy, and this grand final just gone is the first time that John's been too unwell to actually present his own trophy. And not only John, but there's the whole family of the Newmans have an outstanding record in the Darwin. The 4 brothers, as it's been said before, played together in the 1980 grand final. But there's at least 10 times in the Darwin where the Newman brothers have kicked over 100 goals in a season. Not many families got that sort of a stat. The Darwin's record for most goals in a game at 23 is jointly held by Alan Newman and another fella from South Burnie. Yola's record for most goals in a game, 21, is held by John Newman. So even though they played so far back, some of those records are still current today. Between them, the brothers have 17 DFA premierships, so that's not a bad effort either. Not many families have done that. That's 17 more than what my family's got. In 2019, I got a phone call from John. I'd been sort of finished up with the Darwin at that stage, and I got a phone call from John. Frog here. He said, "What are you doing football next year?" I said, "Nothing." He said, "We need you at Yolla." He said, "We're going to fold if you don't come." So I went up to a meeting. I said, "I'll have a look and see what I think." I went to this meeting. I said, "I'll give you 2 years and see how it goes." Well, the first year we got wiped out with COVID and nothing happened. So I've given them now 6 years, 5 years that we've played, and the one we had off with COVID. There's been 10 premierships in that side, and between us, with John's help and a lot of other people's help as well, we've won 4 premierships in that time. It lifted the club completely out of the doldrums, and we're one of the strong clubs in the association. And that wouldn't have happened if John didn't have the passion to actually get something done about the state of where the club was at. I feel privileged to probably be the only ex-umpire that John's made a friend of. And I think over all the teams that John's coached and had anything to do with, the team he put together at home, I think is the one he's most proudest of, and I think it's the best team he's ever had anything to do with. So to Julia and Nick and Chelsea and all your families, we're with you and we'll be there for you. Thank you.
Firstly, thanks, Ray, for stealing most of what I've got written down here. But anyway, I'll keep it short. Firstly, I'd just like to thank Julia, Chelsea and Nick for giving me the opportunity to help celebrate the life of the great man. I know he'll be up there looking at me saying, hurry up and don't talk bullshit, Wilbur. So I'm not going to do that. He was a very well respected, if not one of the most respected people in the Yolla Footy Club for a long time. And not only with his coaching and his playing, that right up until the end of this year, he was still trying to recruit coaches and players. Frog didn't always do things in an orthodox way. Sometimes it was the opposite, especially in this era, which was in the 80s. Props at training, including chooks, a possum were used, and I can say I don't think that those animals were harmed. And I only found out a few days ago, being up at Julia's place, where those chooks come from. And I will keep it our secret. As I say, a lot of this has already been said today. Just one story I've got. I remember a game we were playing up at Sprint where the host club were good enough to put a pig on a spit for us and enjoy it after the game. The pig was situated in the front of the club rooms, which were directly behind the top end goals. Frog told me when we ran out in the ground I was going to knock that pig off the spit before the game was over. He spent time on the bench kicking towards the bottom end, but when it come to the top end, it was full on. Everyone knows he was a very good kick, long and very hard. The goal umpire feared for his life at times, and the club room windows took a fair pounding. We ended up winning that game by about 200 points. I was sitting beside Frog after the game in the sheds, and I said, "Good day out, Frog." He'd kicked 19 goals that day. He looked at me and said, "Shit day, Wilbur. They managed 5 goals, which was their biggest score for the year. I had 15 shots at the pig and missed. And now we have to stay in this shithole and eat it with them." But as always, he went into the change rooms after the game, and we certainly enjoyed it. Above all, Frog's football achievements, I got to know him really well as a mate, and over a long period of time. He was a great family man, and you didn't have to talk to him long before his family, Julia, Chelsea and Nick, would be talked about in the very best and proudest way. When his beautiful grandchildren come along, he was so proud and spoke of them with a glow on his face, which I was lucky enough to sit in the car with him up there the late end of this year, and it didn't take long, and he was talking about the kids and their fishing story. So Frog was a great mate and a mentor to me, both on and off the ground. He is gone, but trust me, he will never ever be forgotten. I had a phone call from Frog 2 days before he passed to say goodbye, and it was the hardest phone call of my life, but we did have a conversation. And I'll be forever grateful for the chance to do that. Rest in peace, mate.
You jumped the gun on me a bit, Ray. Phil last. He's on his way.
I think the Yolla boys organised for us Somerset fellas to be so far up the back. We gathered here today with heavy hearts, but also with immense pride and gratitude to celebrate the life of a man who was not only a footballer, but the first coach to win a premiership in the Somerset colours. An achievement done in his first year of coaching, John Frog Newman. Frog's attributes don't stop there. He was a respected life member, presidents and patrons to be named, respected by life members, presidents and patrons, to be named coach of the team of champions, Somerset's greatest team ever. It's not often someone earns a nickname that outlives their first name, but to all of us he was simply Frog. And the name wasn't just about the way he marked the football or kicked goals, it was about his spirit, determination, and never one to be counted out. Frog was a key part of the mighty 1982 Somerset Premiership team, a side that still holds a special place in the heart of this club and this community. Those involved remember it clearly and still talk about it to this day. Frog played with heart. He gave everything for the jumper. When the stakes were highest, Frog rose to the occasion as he always did. That flag wasn't just won on the day, it was built through respect from when he took the job, creating toughness, mateship and earning everyone's respect, and he got the best out of a previous playing group that Frog embodied all of that. Some of the stories from the Premiership team players who are life members of Somerset today, I spoke to them earlier in the week, they've given me a couple little things. Steve Horse Farrow, Frog actually came up with this nickname. The second semi-final against Yolla, the pre-game speech, Frog held a Hessian bag, and Lorne Binode pulled out a gutted possum and proceeded to show the group and say, if we lose this, you will end up looking like this. Frog came up to Horse and said, right, their ruckman has just come off a facial injury, so I want you to open it back up. It comes to half-time. Horse seen Frog take the possum out of the bag and make a V-line for him. He shoved the possum in his face and said, I asked you to do a job and it's not done. First boundary throw in after half-time. Horse went for the ball, but he accidentally missed it and cleaned up poor old mate. And he never came back on the ground again. Job was finished. You talk about Gary Bowen. Gary Bowen never forgot his time with Frog. He got one night at training, Frog got all the players to lay on their back and he walked across their stomachs. Frog was well over 120 kilos at this stage and poor Bowie was 17 at the time. And he said, I won't step on yours, young fella, but make sure you hit me on the tit when coming out of the middle. Many times Bowie did, but he clearly remembers the last kick of the grand final when he hit Frog lace out and they were 5 points up and the siren blew. He turned to Bowie and said, fuck it, I don't have to kick it, mate, we've got her. I don't reckon the people with the 6 or 11 point margins would have been too happy. But beyond the white lines, Frog gave even more. He was the kind of bloke who turned up early and stayed late with many frothies involved. He had time for the young fellas, gave everything he earned to the players and always gave words of advice to those who needed it and a clip over the ear if needed as well. Although he is Yolla through and through, a little bit of his big heart was Somerset. To his family, thank you for sharing him with us and acknowledging that the Somerset Football Club meant a lot to Frog. We know that football took time, energy and commitment, but the legacy he leaves here is something truly special. The club is stronger because of him. People are better because they knew him. Frog wasn't just part of a premiership team, he was part of a community, a history and a heartbeat that will never fade. As we say goodbye today, we know that the Guernsey may be hung up for the last time, but the memories and stories and the spirit of Frog will echo through the change rooms, the boundary line and every future Somerset side player that pulls on the Guernsey. Rest easy, Frog, you played it hard and you played it true, and he'll always be one of the greats of the Somerset Football Club.
I better hurry up and wrap this up. This shit's taken too long, and he wouldn't be happy about it either. But I've got an apology. Jimmy Buckley was become good mates with Dad the last few years, and had a lot of time together. And Jimmy might have felt a bit ill this morning himself, actually. And he wanted to be here, but he couldn't get on the plane. So we'll have an apology, and thanks, Jimmy, if you're watching, mate. I'm just going to quickly acknowledge the other 3 clubs that Dad was involved with. Obviously, Wynyard, Dad played there in the under-17s and under-19s before moving into the senior team. He was a promising young player at Wynyard, but his season was cut short in 1975, as Uncle Paul described. He had a severe leg injury, and he thought that was it. So he later on, he went to Yolla. He reckoned he wasn't any good after he'd had a crook leg to play coastal football. He returned there some years later when he coached. Main reason he went to coach there, they wasn't going to win a flag or anything like that, but he wanted to blood some good young players for the future, which he done at several clubs, so good on him. Just another one, he had a year at Burnie Tigers. His year was cut short there too. That wasn't from a broken leg though, that was because he got the arse. There's an incident where he asked for a head count, and I don't think he was real happy with the answers or the questions or whatever else happened. So he walked the team off the ground. I believe at the time it was probably one of the only games that got called off from such an incident. So anyway, I think he had to pack his bags about 2 weeks later after that. Just another quick one was Trawada. There wasn't much success at Trawada, but he reckoned it was one of the most enjoyable years he had in football. Same thing, he mainly went there to help the club out. It was in country areas back then in the early 90s. A lot of clubs were struggling for numbers. The club later amalgamated with the city and became the TC Bulldogs. I played there 12 years later and we won a senior flag. But they didn't worry about that. They were just still talking about fucking 12 years earlier, how much fun they had and hardly won a game. So that just shows you the respect that he had. I'd like to thank everyone for coming and celebrating Dad. I'd like to give a big thank to Parkside Funerals, especially Simon. You've done an excellent job. Yep, cheers. Burnie Arts and Function Centre, thank you very much. He said to me on his way out, well, he actually said it about someone else previously, we got a run and joke with each other. As a bloke, he looked at me one day, he talked to me, he said to me afterwards, he said, "You like that bastard?" I said, "Oh, he's all right." He said, "You'll fit the people at his funeral will fit in a phone box." That was his way of saying he probably didn't think much of him. Anyway, another big mention is, a special mention is to Miriam and Carl Gaby. Beautiful flower arrangement there for Dad. They're out of their garden, muchly appreciated. Mum, yep. Big thanks to Mum, Chelsea and Matthew. It's been a pretty hard week. I haven't bawled yet, but I probably will. A big special thanks to my wife, Jane. She's been a pillar of strength. She's been a pillar of strength, love and support from me and the family. Been in a very difficult time. Anyway, see you, Tussick. Where's that young boy?
I just want to tell you the time will come when I can hear your voice or call your name. when I am slowly crossing up to the other side. It'll be alright. I had a wonderful life, so don't cry when I'm gone. You don't live this long without emotion, and I was lucky enough to feel them all. I got most of my freedom staring at the ocean. Oh, I did it all. Now I can stand tall. Don't cry when I'm gone. Hey, my love, don't cry when I'm gone. 'Cause I was always the hero in your eyes. I've been blessed enough to write you this one song. Then you can carry on and make it go strong. Don't cry when I'm gone. I was given the gift to hear the wind blow. Saw most of the full moons as they rose. Caught the morning sunrise in my living room. I can see the color blue. Oh, and he carried me through. Don't cry when I'm gone. Been able to reach for the stars and grab me one, achieving all the dreams and goals I know. So when you think of me, look up into the night, see the bright blue star, then I'll be in your eyes. Don't cry when I'm gone. My love, don't cry when I'm gone. 'Cause I was always the hero in your eyes. And I've been blessed enough to write you this one song. Then you can carry on. You can go out strong. Don't cry when I'm gone. My love, don't cry when I'm gone. 'Cause I was always the hero in your eyes. And I've been blessed enough to write you this one song. Now you can carry on. Go and do it strong. Don't cry when I'm gone. Chima.